So to introduce myself, my name is Georgia Halston. I run Halston Marketing. This is our office in the background here. I'm actually not really there, but I thought it would be nice to make it look as though we look quite professional and you don't actually have to see my clothes drying in the background. So I have been running Halston Marketing for over 3 years now, and we've been running also a technology initiative called Reg Tech Talks for the last year. I've been in marketing for over 10 years now. I started out in SEO, and then I moved to a full service agency.
Oh no! It looks like she's frozen. This is annoying. Claire Marie, what do you think we do now? Is anyone else there?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Titi?
I can. Is that you, Gisette?
Yes. When it froze for me, I could see everybody else was still moving and I could hear you.
How strange. I actually have no concept of the frozen experience because I don't know how to help. So did you log back out and then log back in?
Yeah, I left the meeting and then rejoined.
Okay, as it happens, we've only got one Lightning Talk speaker now, so I'll just try and get onto email. Oh, okay, there's Georgia, just to say to log back in. Hello there. Did you hear us all that time?
Can you hear me?
Yes, very strange. But anyway, I'm grateful. I can hear you. Carry on.
I now can't hear anything. One second.
I can't hear you. Keep speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry. So I don't know where I got up to. I think I said something about vodka and beers. Is that where I was up to, Gigi?
No, you didn't say that.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, it got to the point where I kind of got a little bit sick of working with all these, the really good brands at the time. And I started to look more at B2B stuff. So that's why I kind of launched my own company, because I really wanted to work within B2B marketing. And then my love for things like global supply chain, logistics and stuff like that really grew from there. So there's kind of one lesson that I wanted to pass on from being a founder myself and running a business. And that lesson is to be interested. It's actually one of the pillars of the culture at Halston Marketing. It's to be interested and be interesting. And the first thing that you need to be interested in is what you do. So a thirst for knowledge is crucial to success in many facets in life. Unfortunately for me, my interests tend to be quite niche. So I'm really interested in things like heavy industry, manufacturing, chemicals and coatings, life sciences, and also super high tech software solutions, particularly relevant to those industries. So that's really lucky for me, in that I run a B2B marketing agency. And it's genuinely what gets me up in the morning. I'm ready to read the manufacturer magazine, digital printer, SHD logistics, give me that over Cosmopolitan or whatever normal people read. But the issue for me then is to find other people who are as interested as I am in those industries. But luckily for me, I found some real gems who have managed to help me build out the business over the last 3 years. And to be honest, enthusiasm is contagious. I feel like if I could get any one of you guys working for me for a day, you would come out of it being like, yeah, industrial manufacturing is like the most interesting thing in the world, just because if you are genuinely interested, your enthusiasm just rubs off on other people. And I think that sort of leads me on to Reg Tech Talks, which I'll explain a little bit more. Reg Tech Talks is a technology initiative that we started over a year ago now, and we started it at Leeds Digital Festival last year. So it's a technology initiative where we talk about tech that creates efficiencies around regulatory compliance. So there's that dichotomy of things that are super interesting to me, from the very heavily regulated industries like life sciences and finance and manufacturing. And then the really high tech side of things that we're also really interested in, being overlaid to create efficiencies and things that are very heavily regulated. Because to me, if something is heavily regulated, it means that it's important. It means that it has to do with a fundamental pillar of our society, from the things that you put in your body to the way that the world is governed. And if technology can be used to ease, not circumvent, but create efficiencies in complying to those regulations, and that's just a really great thing. The last event that we did was in Manchester as part of the Digital City Festival, and that was on reg tech in manufacturing, and that was probably the one that was closest to my heart, because Industry 4.0 is super up there on my list of things that get me up in the morning. The second part of the be interested, obviously be interested in what you do, because there are some people who are like, I hate my job and I don't really know, why I got into this. So if you're not super passionate about it, for me, I would ask why you doing it? Why, if I didn't live and breathe reg tech and heavy industry, like there's no way I would be able to convince people to work with me. The second part is something that I think people kind of forget as well, and that is to be interested in business. So if you are an amazing marketer, or if you're amazing whatever, and you think, oh, I could make a business out of this, you have to be interested in running a business, because if you're not genuinely interested in the world of business itself, then your interest in actually running a company might start to fall. So either work at the world's biggest marketing agencies and do really well at being a marketer, or if you do want to start your own company, maybe find someone to go into business with who does like business, who likes the side of it, who likes looking at projections and P&Ls and all of that cool stuff. So for me, I love business, and I couldn't imagine working for someone else now. Being an entrepreneur is literally, the lifeblood of our company, and what moved me personally. So I'm constantly learning as much as I can, from researching, reading, particularly listening to podcasts. So I'm going to go a little bit off-piste right now in terms of a bit of an example. There's a podcast that I need to recommend, and it's called Business Wars. I don't know if anyone's heard of it or listens to it. But they tell stories about businesses in the past who have come to blows. I've recently been listening to Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks, and it goes all the way through, like how they worked against each other and what happened between those two businesses. There's also Sony versus Nintendo, if you're super into computer games and stuff like that. But the one that I think is the most relevant right now was one that was Ford versus Chevrolet. So you'll know both of those are obviously American car companies, but if you imagine Ford opened their doors, Henry Ford opened his doors to his factory in 1906. And they had their ups and downs through the roaring 20s, the 30s. They had all these different cars, and Chevrolet were coming out and whatever. It got to the 1940s, the early 1940s, and as all of the companies in America and across Europe were all enthralled in an international crisis, which was World War II. So what Ford did was he instantly reacted to that market where no one was buying a car anymore. And he turned his factory from an automotive plant into an aircraft factory. And by 1944, they were rolling one B-24 bomber off their production line every single hour. And that was a car factory 6 months prior. So you don't have to be in industrial manufacturing to draw parallels from that story. And you don't have to be as interested in the history of industrial manufacturing as much as I am to be able to learn some lesson of business resilience from that story. What I'm trying to say is always be interested in business, learn from the past, because the fundamentals of business are steadfast no matter what industry you're in and no matter what era you're in. So you can learn something from Henry Ford doing what he was doing 70 years ago, and learn from business resilience. And what I loved from what Lauren was saying about her sort of not necessarily a pivot, but it was a reaction to the situation that she was in, with a sort of freemium version of her product. Now, I don't know, Lauren, if you're as much of a fan of Henry Ford as I am, but I love the fact that you turned around and said, right, you know what, we need to open this up to everyone. We need to give back. We need to react right now, make the best of this situation. And let's start giving people free access. And not only did you mention earlier on that is giving you access to potential leads for the future, it's giving you an amazing amount of data, user data, and how people are using your platform, and you can use that later on as well, because as we know now, data is oil.
Sorry to chip in there. Lauren had to leave just a few minutes after 7, but all this is being filmed, so I'm sure she'll get to respond and you'll connect. But yeah, this is fascinating. Carry on. It's absolutely gold.
Thanks, Gigi. So what we did, our reaction to the situation. Now, I smiled when I said that we did our reg check in the manufacturing sector at the Digital City Festival in Manchester, because we were there with some clients at the big exhibition hall at Manchester Central. And then 2 weeks later, it was a hospital. And that just shows the difference between, you know, a marketplace that's booming and that, you know, the reflection of that, of this huge exhibition center with hundreds of people bustling around doing business, you know, deals are being made, to 2 weeks later it's a hospital. It's absolutely stark. And for us, the clients that we've seen do well are the ones who have went, oh, all right, you know, lemons, let's make business lemonade. Let's not just sit and mourn about how people are furloughed. Let's not talk about how everyone's back at home or how we can't get into the office. Let's think about how we can react to this situation in a super creative way. And that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting that Lauren did. What we've done is, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to be building B-24 bombers, but what we're rolling off the production line is content, because we're a PR company and that's what we do, and we've not stopped. We've not went back and thought, oh, well, we can't do any PR because no one, you know, has the budget or anything like that. We thought, well, do you know what? We're going to start speaking to everyone that we know. Let's start doing collaborative content. Let's start saying, hey, do you want to collaborate on a thought piece? We're going to maybe get some coverage for ourselves. Do you guys want to get involved? We're finding ways to create conversations with people in this situation, and we're giving stuff away for free. So I'm not sure if you saw the video on Facebook ads, but that was something that we were like, you know what, look, Facebook are giving away free ad spend. What we can do is create a webinar where we show people how to set up a Facebook ads campaign, because I can do that with my eyes closed. But it's something that other people don't know how to do, and that's a skill set that I can so easily pass on for free, and it's going to cost me nothing but half an hour, which is just being like, here's how you set up a Facebook ad. But the fact that they've got that resource out there, that's something that we thought creatively about and thought, right, let's give back, let's see what we can do about that as well. So how much time do I have left, Katie?
Good question. So technically, Claire-Marie should be getting ready to grill with you. No, you stopped bang on time. It was supposed to be quarter past 7 to 7:30. You're doing your talk, and then we'll be doing some sort of roundup and Q&A with you. I'm not sure where she's gone, to be honest with you, but I'm sure she'll be back on shortly. I will say some of the things that you said there that have stood out to me is like basically deciding that if you decide to react to the situation in a creative manner, you actually come across as somebody who's doing stuff. And so your impression of the world at the moment is on one side, there are people who are moaning about being followed and can't deal with it. And there's people that are just doing stuff. And that really stuck out to me. Like you described two different sets of people just purely by their attitudes, and it's very trite. But the way you explained that made me think, wow, it's such an important thing to know about at this time. You know, just deciding to get on with it makes a massive difference, and it makes a massive impression on people. Sorry, I'm just preaching back.
I didn't want it to be a flippant comment. I don't want people to think that I don't have it in my heart to empathize with people who genuinely have these issues in their businesses, and that I can just sit back and be like, oh, well, I run a PR agency and we're all working from home and we're fine and we don't have any issues. Like, that is not the case at all. We just chose to be like, God, what can we possibly do? Do you know what? We're good at doing content. We're good at working with people. Let's just do what we do best. And Henry Ford's shit was my reaction. And I know that it was a bit of a segue to quite an old example, but it just, the fact that I research and read and learn about how people have done business in the past gives me insight, and it gives me inspiration on how to deal with stuff like this, because there have been things like this happen in the past. And if you go back to see how companies did through World War II and even World War One, and if you look, even the only thing that we've found comparable has been the 2008 crash. And if you look to see how, if you do the research and you're like, okay, how did businesses actually get through that barren time, and you learn from it, you know, the information is there for the taking, and that's, you know, that's all you can really do.
Can I ask you, so sorry to interrupt there, you've picked on something there that made me think, well, I can relate to this because I know what Ascenti kind of started doing in the last few weeks, and it was just carrying on with some plans we were planning to do for people that were organizing supper clubs, but we couldn't do them because, you know, Boris Johnson said shut all the restaurants, and we weren't fully in lockdown mode, but we've pivoted that to doing virtual events. And so I guess what I'm saying is, in your experience of people changing their direction due to things like this in history, what's the running theme? How would you say that? How would you describe it to someone else?
I think that from stuff that I've learned from looking at businesses in the past, and there's a really great book that I want everyone to read. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's by a guy called Ben Horowitz. And I will make a little segue here. Listening to that book was really personal to me. It was about the .com boom, and he's this big tech mogul. He's a super interesting guy. What's great about it is he actually plays it quite fast and loose with pronouns. So every so often he'll be like, so the CEO, he was blah, blah, blah. Then he say, so what a real CEO needs to do, she needs to do this. And I was just like, oh, like when I was listening to the book, I was cheating. But when I actually like heard a guy say, she, the CEO, she does this, you can visualize yourself in that place. And I was just like, do you know how much of a difference that actually makes to me to relate to this lesson? Just so simply by you saying she instead of he, just randomly mixing that up. So anyway, I would definitely recommend to read that book. But from the kind of the boom and then bust of the .com stuff that I learned from Ben Horowitz, all the cool stuff that I was listening to, especially with the most recent one, Dunkin' Donuts and versus Starbucks, and how Americans were fluctuating in terms of how they were drinking coffee and all that cool stuff. What they do is it takes a little bit of entrepreneurial instinct to kind of try and figure out where things are going to go. You don't need to be able to look a month into the future. Just think about what's happening next week. How can I help people next week? How can I add value to this situation next week? And something else, yeah, I'm a PR and I'm going to throw this in. Do some PR around it. Like, you know, if you have retooled your factory, the first guys to do that were Burberry, and they sent their PR out, what, 5 weeks ago or something. They were one of the first ones that I saw. Straight away they were reactive, and I doubt they had even retooled their factory by the time they had the PR off the press. They were just like, yeah, we've totally retooled, and they probably hadn't actually done it until, but they had the ambition to do that. to look after the NHS, and the amount of PR that they did around it. Like, I'm not saying benefit from the situation, but if you're doing something good, and if you're doing something that can actually retain all of your staff in your factories, that's an amazing story. And also, if you can then give inspiration for other companies to do things similar, which they have done, because there's huge amounts of companies that I know across the north that are manufacturing ventilators and gowns and masks, and they've all retooled to do all this stuff, and that was off the back of that massive company doing that, and because they did the PR around it. So don't feel like it's about we're tooting our own horn about having a creative solution to this situation. It's fine to do the PR, and that's not just because I'm a PR.
That's fantastic. I'm going to let Claire Marie join. That was really, really useful. I'm really grateful for that. Claire Marie, you sound like you have some great questions, or at least
I feel like I've been to the moon and back twice this evening on this call. I was just thinking there, Georgia, when you were talking about Burberry, it reminds, I think we've all here in Manchester have heard of Didsbury Gin, who again moved very quickly to making hand sanitizers, and repurposed their factory, or their distillation plant, and again, that we'll all know Didsbury Gin now forever, no matter what happens. And so it's been really interesting to see that. One thing I've noticed, though, I would like to ask you this question, because my business, I specialize in change management, and I could see this thing coming, and then I could imagine the disruption and devastation that it was going to cause, and a bit like I think maybe Seth said in the last panel, people were too busy to have a chat. They were doing too much. I mean, I was thinking, like, I'm really happy to support people, whether having coaching conversations or just any type of conversation, but actually I sort of looked at it and thought, do you know what, my clients are not ready yet they were in the middle of the incident, and so a bit of, it's about timing as well. I mean, what are your thoughts around the timing for being able to maybe refocus what you're doing and then go to market or start communicating about it?
I think that it's about the messaging, really, and being appreciative of what's happening. None of the solutions that we've come up with have been salesy whatsoever. We've not been in touch and been like, and I've got a lot of emails, oh, I hope you're safe, and it's like, oh my god, I'm so sick of people, you've never even met me, and you're hoping that my family are all right. And nothing that we have done has been like overtly get involved and work with us. We are quiet. We've not been like hugely hit. We've got some great clients who are doing some amazing things, who have been super resilient and stuck with us and everything. So I've got to say that I feel very happy that I've got all of those amazing clients that we have on our roster. But I think that what people have done, it's been a bit too reactive sometimes with the messaging, and it's been like, oh my god, like you've got one person, maybe your FC, just being like, our sales are going to go down, sales team, even though you're working from home, you've got to push. And there's been these haphazard emails or DMs on LinkedIn that have been sort of cobbled together that have just been this horrendous reactive way of communicating with you, where it's like, oh, we're doing this thing, or do you want a free trial of whatever, and you're just like, I definitely don't need this right now. What I could have done with from Mr. Software platform for marketing companies who's trying to sell to me right now, what I could have done with is, hey, I know things are tough, but here's a link to a video tutorial of getting in touch with HMRC, or here's something with, that's actually going to be helpful to me.
Yeah, something useful.
So I think it's the timing is definitely more to do with what message you're going out with. So I think that when there was that reactive time a couple of weeks ago, people should have been thinking a little bit more about how they could have been helping their potential clients rather than selling to them.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So how are we doing on time, gang? We've still got quite a lot of people here, and we've heard a lot. I'm going to ask, has anybody got any particular questions? I'm keeping an eye on the chat box and also the Q&A, but I haven't picked any up, but that could be me. I'm now doubting myself in the middle of all this.
There is nothing, you're absolutely right. I'm tracking it as well. There's not much. There's a lovely shout out to Georgia for her podcast and book recommendations that they were very helpful. That's from Roxy Van der Post. You could probably read that yourself, Georgia. But yeah, no, it's I think we're all riveted. If I was listening, I might not have written anything so far in the chat because it's just really interesting. So take it away. We've still got a good 18 minutes and you've already started telling people about the next event. What we could do, any Q&A that you want to do. Claire-Marie, still you running the thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask Georgia one last question because it would be great to hear from you. What we talked about in the last panel, chunks, didn't we? Like, you know, we've been in a sort of, the incident happens and now we're in a chunk. And how do you see, what way are you thinking the next sort of number of weeks, number of months, maybe between now and the end of the year? What are you thinking? And then what sort of responses are you thinking that organizations should be thinking about?
I mean, I think that what I try and say is don't maybe plan that far ahead. I know it's really stupid thing to say in business, but you can just spend your whole life planning and things are going to change the next day and you're like, oh well, we're just going to have to change it. You're just going to have to constantly be changing your plan, and it's fine to refine the way that you're doing things that way. But I feel like at this point, just try and not be so stressed out as to plan for every single eventuality and kind of let things happen for a little bit and stick to your guns, stick to what you're good at doing. Things like exhibitions, stuff like that we work with clients on, doing talks, going to conferences, all of that kind of real face-to-face PR stuff is what we recommend for the vast majority of our clients. Is part of their ongoing PR, and it's not something that I think is probably going to happen, you know, really maybe this time, you know, before Christmas. Interestingly, I'm also, as well as running my company, I'm on the board of the International Association of Business Communicators, which if anyone is in marketing or PR, you should check out. But what we're doing with those guys is we're in the middle of researching for a white paper about crisis comms, about what has actually happened. So we're speaking to the guys on the board for the IABC, and we've got people on there who are the communications directors for some of the big four finance companies and professional services, like absolutely massive companies, pharmaceutical companies, some of the country's biggest companies. We've got the comms directors, and they're doing all of the internal comms as well, all of the community engagement stuff. So what we're looking to do is create interviews between January until June. So obviously some of them are going to be retrospective, and create an ongoing narrative of what the comms were in all of these massive companies. So it's going to be like, right, in January, what were you guys doing? And I know that there's a big finance company that we're going to speak to who had a lot of conferences in China at the time that were cancelled. And then we're going to go into a tech company and say, what were you doing? And we're going to have this whole commentary of between January to June. And one of the big reasons that I'm doing this is so that in the future, when something like this inevitably happens again, not necessarily this, but there will be some sort of crisis, then 20, 100 years time, we'll have built this amazing diary of what companies across every single sector that you can imagine did at every single period of time throughout. So it will be this anthology of information. You can tell I'm getting really excited about the fact that we're going to be putting this together.
It sounds amazing. Yeah.
And it's going to be a completely free resource that we're going to publish as a white paper for everyone to view and be like, oh, right, that's what we could have learned.
I mean, I'm interested in that from my change management point of view. You know,
yeah, I thought you might be, yeah.
A lot of organizations I work with, you know, you can design the change. So coming up with what that should change to is sort of the easy bit, but it's actually navigating it and taking the organization from A to B. And of course, one of the key pillars of that is getting your communications and engagement right. So that will be really, really interesting. And you'll be able to see who did it well and who maybe didn't as well, won't you?
Yeah, I mean, the ones who didn't probably will not highlight that in the interviews. But what I am really interested in is kind of what, because there's one guy that I've not done the interview with him, but he's super interested, and he's one of my clients, and he works at a coatings and chemicals company that has 60,000 staff across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and he has to deal with all of them. And for me, it's more like, how did you deal with communicating to people across such a vast region in whose countries are dealing with so many different things? Because you could be, you know, Italy's in there, but also, you know, you have Norway, but then you have Africa who aren't, you know, you don't have to really have the same communications. How do you deal with comms across? Anyway, it's going to be great. It's going to be really, really interesting.
I definitely want to see what comes out of that. We have one more question. I think is that from Fabiola? Is that right? And in fact, you sort of touched on it a little bit, but I think I would like to hear more about this one as well. As a marketing expert, what are your thoughts on physical event conferences going forward versus virtual events? And how do we engage with audiences? And I think we're all listening hard, aren't we, Chi-Chi, on this one?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, I'm always going to want to have at least some human contact. I'm a people person, and I love meeting new people and, you know, speaking to people in that way. But to be honest, I was kind of like, oh, how are webinars going to work? You know, people really going to speak to each other? How is networking actually going to work? But I was actually on a IABC webinar the other day. It was about women in comms, and what they did was they had breakout rooms where people they just subsected everyone. There's about 100 people on the call, and they just put us into rooms during the break where there was just 6 of us, and we all had to introduce ourselves and speak to each other and talk about what had happened in the panel and everything. And I was just like, this is actually really, really good. I feel like a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily just come up to me if I was in a conversation or in a group of people, and you know how people get when it's like a networking event and you don't necessarily have the confidence to go up and actually speak to someone. I felt like, do you know what, this is a great platform for people who maybe are a little bit less of a people person to actually have that voice and feel so much more comfortable in a situation. And for me, that just gives me so much more opportunity to learn from people, because I feel like those guys who don't put themselves out there have a lot to offer, and I don't necessarily always get access to, you know, what's in their brains. So it works really, really well. And I'm a bit of a convert now. I was really surprised by it. And all of this Leeds Digital Festival stuff, I was like, oh, it's going to go online, you know, do I have time to sit? And I'm just like, do you know what? I've got more time to sit in the house and do this than I would to drive into town, find parking in Leeds, and then go to the event, and then, you know, and I've got more time to sit here and do this, and then go and eat the pizza that my partner's just ordered.
Yeah.
So actually,
what's interesting, I've noticed actually working with different groups is, you know, previously a lot of your networking groups would have been very geographically constrained, you know, because literally, like you say, you have to get into Leeds or into Manchester, and the number of times I wanted to go to something but I couldn't physically get from wherever I was to wherever it was. And now, of course, the only constraint is, can you get to a screen, and do you have the Zoom number or the Teams ID or whatever it is? And I think it will actually really transform the connectivity, maybe for better or for worse, but it just changes it, doesn't it? It means, you know, anybody in the world can now come to Female Tech Founder. Chi-Chi, we're going global.
That's amazing. No,
we thought we were just going to Leeds, but we actually have the potential to go further.
It's amazing. Like, you did actually ask, we talked about doing breakout rooms, but because of the way this particular event has been organized on Zoom webinar, we can't do that. So there's a limitation on the platform itself. But Georgia, it was nice to hear you basically kind of confirm what Claire-Marie had mentioned, because she'd organized an event last week and they used that to great effect. I hadn't been into a breakout room before, but it was fascinating, sort of being thrown into this sort of breakout session and then being thrown out of it. The only awkward thing I found about them is they sometimes end without you having any control. You know, you're talking to people and then you get the 2-minute warning and someone starts saying something else about their company and then you all get thrown back into the main room. But other than that, they work really well. So I agree.
Yeah. So
there's so much less pressure.
Sorry, go ahead, Georgia.
Isn't there so much less pressure than if you were in a room with people? I'm a people person, but sometimes you're just like, oh, I don't want to go up to that group of people, and you just sometimes you've had a long day at work or whatever. But it's so much easier. You're sort of like all just there on camera, like, hello, should we speak? And then 5 minutes later, you're all just best mates jumping in. It's great.
Yeah, 100.
So what I will commit to everybody that's on the call is this is something Chi and I will be investigating further, and I'm going to take this opportunity to mention the next date. So it's going to be on Monday the 18th of May for the next female tech founder. I'm hoping you'll all put that in your diary. Before I go any further, I want to say a huge thank you to Georgia for giving us that lightning talk and for sharing your insights and recommendations and podcasts and everything. So we really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Yay! Applause.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can do hand claps too somewhere apparently. So we're watching time here. I have a few announcements to make and Chi might have some things to add. So I've already mentioned that the next female tech founders on the 18th of May. Chi, tell us who it's in conjunction with.
Indeed, it's with Berkeley Eagles Lab Salford, which is quite exciting. So if we were back in the real world, then we would have all been traipsing across the Media City in Manchester and would be going up to Social 7, the restaurant in that building, and basically having female tech founder there rather than being in the city centre of Manchester. But nobody can do any of that for a while. So we're meeting and congregating on Zoom, but the Berkeley's Eagles Lab network in Salford will be a big part of what we're actually planning, and also some of the female founders in the Barclays network are potentially going to be involved speaking. So we're looking at it as an interesting collaboration, particularly around this season of navigating the government support we have for funding. So people that are working out whether they're eligible for this, that, and the other, you know, who can get them into that place where they're picking someone's brain who has direct access to British Bank or to HMRC. So we're trying to basically put some meat around this support that the government started for startups, bearing in mind that not all of us are going to be able to access everything there, but at least we'll have a community that will give us the opportunity to start, you know, basically finding our feet for those that really need support with funding, finding our feet at this difficult time. So that's me. So if you're affected in any way, shape or form by any of the issues we've talked about and any of the things that you saw in the poll, then please mention it in the chat here, but ideally on the Slack group we have for this event. So you might have seen things on social media around the Slack group we have for Female Tech Founder or the question board. Just get in touch on Twitter and we'll take it up with the relevant stakeholders for you. There you go. Over to you, Claire-Marie. What's
Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to mention, and so Chi sort of mentioned, it's the Women Leading in Business group that meets at Alliance Manchester Business School, and we meet once a month, and last month we had the first online experience, and it is very much 50-50 about networking and about listening to a business speaker. Normally when we meet physically, there'd be 25-30 people in the room. Last week when we got together, we had 60 participants. So it was, you know, we've doubled nearly in size, and it was really interesting. And just like Georgia mentioned, we very specifically took the opportunity to break people into smaller groups so they could talk to each other and connect. And what we've heard is since then, people have linked in with each other, and also had one-on-one on telephone, the good old-fashioned telephone conversation, which I'm a big fan of at the minute because it rests my eyes. So the next one is on Wednesday the 13th of May. It's a breakfast type thing from 9:30 to 11, and our guest speaker next month is Chi-Chi. So you've got a few reasons why you might want to come to that. And I would really recommend it. If you have any events that are happening that you want to share with people, please feel free to put them in the panel here. Just as a bit of a wrap up, I want to think about what we've done today. So, you know, when we started, we had the panel, and we had Lauren and Joseph and Rachel speaking to us, and each of them give us their stories and their insights. And I don't know if you remember, but they give us their mantras at the end. I remember it was about being kind to yourself and being yourself, and also enjoying this time. And then we had a little bit of a break, and when we come back, Georgia gave us a lightning talk and told us all sorts of things that I missed half of it, but the bits that I remember were, you know, the industry has changed, and it's about doing what you can to help at the right moment in time. And it's you know, Georgia was talking about, it's not all salesy, because sometimes you're getting inundated with that. We've shared some stuff that's gone on, and and we've heard some absolutely lovely comments from people who've really enjoyed tonight. What I'd really invite you to do now, if you could share in chat what you've enjoyed this evening, that will help us to know what's working. And if you've got any ideas or recommendations, again, please put that in chat. We'd love to see them. We've got some, who's sharing the bit about women in tech in Nottingham on the 7th of May. I think Rachel Morgan, you've shared that, and Chi-Chi's asking for the link for that. Let me see what's.
Hi, yeah, I'm on my husband's Mac, and I'm a little bit slow on it because I don't normally use it. Otherwise, I would have just put the link in. If it's okay, I will. I'll tweet it from my phone instead in a minute and tag you all. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Brilliant, but thanks for sharing that. Joseph, anything you would like to share?
Can you see me?
We can see you.
I'm still here. No, just thank you. It's great. It's great even to have time out to do this sort of thing. You know, to let everybody else just take care of themselves, get their own dinner, and then, you know, just have some time. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. And Georgia, any final comment you might want to make?
Other than the generic rhetoric of staying safe and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure I think we need to come up with something else other than stay safe, because I'm sick of writing out on emails. So if we can come up with a more creative way of saying that, I think that can be the homework for next time, Chi-Chi.
You're such a marketer. That's all I'm going to say. Such a PR marketer person. I love it.
And Chi-Chi, what would you like to say to everybody before we close?
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for taking part. And I'm looking forward to organizing the next one. And I really do hope that we have a way of kind of connecting, not just people who've been listening, but also people who've talked now. Because I think we're in this unique time, and it means that all these experiences we have on Female Tech Founder are going to be marked in a different way than they would have, the ones we had last year. So Claire Marie, you remember what we did last year over the summer and before the summer, and they were all great times. But because we've got video and sort of these connections across borders now, I really think we should think about how we connect everyone again. I don't know whether we'll do like a follow-up panel in 6 months and see what Rachel thinks now, or what, you know, Lauren's done, what Joseph found, you know, with business, what Georgia's been experiencing, stuff like that. I really do think that there's a scope for follow-up on this. So watch this space.
Thank you very much, everyone. I was about to say stay safe, Georgia, and then I could feel you slap me, but be kind, be yourself, and enjoy this time. I'm taking that with me tonight. So thank you very much, everybody.